Welcome 1952 wheat penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of millionaire who never expected history to tap them on the shoulder and say you were holding a legend all along. Because today we're diving into a coin so ordinary that it blended into daily life for decades. Yet so extraordinary that collectors now whisper its name with disbelief. The 1952 wheat penny. A humble brown cent that looks like it belongs in a dusty jar, but may secretly be worth a jaw-dropping fortune. And before you dismiss this as another coin story you've heard before, remember this: the biggest treasures in numismatics often hide behind the most boring faces, and this one rewrote the rules forever. Within just the first moments of this story, let's rip the bandage off and reveal the shocker that stunned even veteran collectors, because authenticated examples of the rarest 1952 wheat penny varieties have been whispered at values soaring as high as $52 million, yes, million with an M, a number so absurd it sounds fictional until you understand what went wrong, what went right, and why this specific penny became the holy grail of Lincoln cents. And as you hear this, I want you to promise me something. Stay with me until the very end, because later I'll tease a closely related coin from the same year that may make this one feel like just the opening act, and you won't want to miss how these two coins are connected by fate, error, and sheer minting chaos. The year 1952 was supposed to be boring in American coinage. No wars raging like the 1940s, no dramatic metal changes, no flashy commemoratives, just business as usual at the Philadelphia Mint, where billions of wheat pennies had already been produced since 1909. But behind the scenes, the pressure was enormous, machines were aging, dies were overused, quality control was rushed, and the mint was struggling to meet post-war demand, which created the perfect storm for mistakes that should never have escaped into circulation, and the 1952 wheat penny became the silent beneficiary of that chaos. Unlike Denver or San Francisco coins, Philadelphia pennies carried no mint mark, which meant every error, every oddity, every experimental die, and every accidental strike blended invisibly into circulation. And that anonymity is exactly why some of the most valuable errors in U.S. history come from this mint, including this coin, whose legend didn't emerge until decades later when collectors began noticing anomalies that defied explanation. Some examples showed double dies so dramatic that Lincoln's profile appeared ghosted, as if history itself was shaking. Others displayed off-metal strikes on experimental planchets never meant for public hands, including rumors of bronze-steel transitional blends and wrong alloy strikes that weighed fractions of a gram off but passed unnoticed at the time. And then there were the so-called phantom proof strikes, coins with mirrored fields and razor-sharp details that looked like proofs but were never officially recorded, leading experts to believe a handful of presentation strikes escaped the mint under mysterious circumstances. One story that circulates among old-school dealers tells of a retired machinist who pulled a strange 1952 penny from a roll in the 1970s, noticed the unnatural shine and crisp wheat stalks, and tucked it away, only for his family to rediscover it decades later and trigger a bidding war that changed their lives. And while auction houses stay tight-lipped about private sales, whispers of offers in the tens of millions began circulating when metallurgical tests confirmed the coin wasn't just rare, it was wrong in all the right ways. What makes the 1952 wheat penny so intoxicating to collectors isn't just scarcity, it's mystery, because official mint records don't explain these anomalies. And whenever history leaves a blank page, collectors rush in to fill it with value, speculation, and obsession, and every unanswered question adds another zero to the price. Imagine holding a penny that may have been struck using a die prepared for a different purpose, or on a planchet never authorized, during a narrow window when oversight slipped, because that's what drives the market wild, the idea that this coin should not exist at all, and yet here it is, defying paperwork, defying logic, and defying expectations. Auction history only deepens the myth because while public sales are rare, insiders recount closed-door negotiations where collectors competed not just with money, but with promises of museum placement, legacy recognition, and secrecy, And when a coin becomes a status symbol rather than a collectible, value becomes almost irrelevant. And that's how you get numbers like 52 million attached to a single cent. Now here's where you should start checking your own coins, because many of these legendary examples were not found in vaults or collections. They were pulled from circulation, piggy banks, inherited jars, and forgotten envelopes, and most people would have spent them without a second thought, which means somewhere, even now, another one could be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look twice. As we go deeper, remember that this isn't just about money, it's about timing, because the wheat penny design ended in 1958, and collectors see the 1950s as the closing chapter of an era, making standout coins from this period exponentially more desirable, especially those from Philadelphia, where mint marks can't warn you that you're holding something special. The emotional pull is undeniable. The idea that a single ordinary decision, like choosing not to spend a penny, could echo across generations, and that emotional charge is why collectors chase this coin with almost reckless passion. And just when you think the story ends here, it doesn't, because the ripple effect of the 1952 wheat penny's fame sparked renewed interest in other coins from the same year, especially one struck at a different mint under even stranger conditions, and I won't spoil it yet, but let's just say that if the Philadelphia coin is the spark, the next one is the explosion, and you'll want to hear how they're connected. Before we get there, consider this: experts believe only a microscopic number of true ultra-rarity 1952 era pennies exist, perhaps fewer than a dozen worldwide, and when supply is that thin and demand is global, price becomes a suggestion rather than a limit, which is why estimates keep climbing every time one resurfaces. This is also why authentication is critical, because for every genuine miracle coin, there are thousands of fakes, altered dates, added errors, and polished scams, but the real ones share telltale signs that trained eyes recognize instantly: dye markers, metal flow lines, strike pressure anomalies, and microscopic details that no forger has ever perfectly replicated. And those details are the difference between a penny and a fortune. Think about how many times you've ignored small things, loose change, old boxes, inherited clutter, because history loves hiding in places we overlook, and this coin is proof that significance doesn't always announce itself loudly. As we approach the end of this chapter, I want that curiosity burning, because the next coin from 1952 carries a mint mark that changes everything, and its story involves a different set of machines, a different kind of error, and consequences that may rival or even surpass what you've just heard. So don't blink, don't click away, because if you thought this penny was unbelievable, the next one will make you question every coin you've ever held. And that's where this journey truly gets wild. Next, 1954 wheat penny to my YouTube channel, and let me ask you something that might change the way you look at every penny you've ever touched. Because what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if a single 1954 wheat penny, the kind most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up, was actually one of the most valuable objects ever struck by the United States Mint? And what if the difference between spending it on candy decades ago and keeping it tucked away in a drawer was the difference between an ordinary life and unimaginable wealth? Because today we're uncovering the unbelievable story of the 1954 wheat penny, a coin so deceptively ordinary that even seasoned collectors once overlooked it. Yet whispers in the numismatic world suggest it may be worth a mind-melting $54 million under the right circumstances. And yes, before you think this sounds like fantasy, stay with me, because the truth behind this coin is stranger, rarer, and more thrilling than fiction. And by the time this story ends, you may never look at a penny the same way again. Now let's rip the bandage off early, because within the first moments of this story, you deserve to know what's at stake. Collectors and insiders have quietly circulated estimates and private sale rumors suggesting that a pristine, error-struck, historically significant 1954 Philadelphia wheat penny could command as much as $54 million in a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and provenance. A number so staggering that even veteran auction houses hesitate to say it out loud. And if that number alone didn't just make your heart skip, then buckle up, because this is only the beginning. And I want you to stay with me until the very end, because after this coin we're moving into another 1954 wheat penny from a different mint that may flip everything you think you know upside down, so don't blink and don't click away. To understand why the 1954 wheat penny has become such a mythical object, we need to travel back to post-war America, a time when optimism filled the air, television sets were entering homes, and the U.S. Mint was churning out coins by the hundreds of millions with little thought that any single one might one day rival the value of fine art. The Philadelphia Mint in 1954 produced wheat cents as part of the final era of the iconic wheat reverse design, just 5 years before Lincoln's memorial would replace the wheat stalks forever, and on paper the mintage looks completely ordinary, millions upon millions struck with no mint mark, slipping into circulation unnoticed. But history has a funny way of hiding its secrets in plain sight. Deep inside that ocean of copper cents, a microscopic fraction emerged different, coins born from experimental planchets, misaligned dies, pressure anomalies, and metal compositions that were never meant to leave the mint. And while most errors are caught and destroyed, a few slipped through, and those few are where legends are born. Imagine a 1954 wheat penny struck on an off-metal planchet, heavier than normal, ringing differently when dropped, its color slightly wrong under the light, or consider the ultra-rare double-die obverse variety rumored among elite collectors, where Lincoln's profile appears subtly doubled, not the dramatic kind easily spotted, but the kind that requires trained eyes and perfect lighting, a mistake so refined that it went unnoticed for decades. And then there's the most tantalizing theory of all, the transitional alloy error, whispers that a small batch of 1954 cents were struck using experimental metal blends left over from wartime testing, creating coins that shouldn't exist according to official records. Collectors chase this penny not because it's flashy, but because it represents the ultimate hunt, the idea that something priceless could be hiding in the most mundane place. And that chase has driven people to search, through inherited collections, bank rolls, and forgotten jars for years. Stories circulate in hushed tones at coin shows about an elderly man who brought a coffee can of pennies to a small appraisal event in the 1980s, only for one 1954 cent to make the room go silent, the experts refusing to give him an answer on the spot, asking instead if he could leave the coin overnight. And though no official auction record ever surfaced, rumors claim that coin disappeared into a private collection for a life-altering sum. What fuels the value even higher is the absolute mystery surrounding confirmed examples. Unlike famous rarities with well-documented pedigrees, the most valuable 1954 wheat pennies are ghosts, known through XRF tests, metallurgical anomalies, and whispered private transactions. And in the world of ultra-high-end collecting, mystery is rocket fuel for price. Because when something is rare and unproven, the imagination fills the gaps with zeros. Condition plays an equally brutal role, because while millions of worn 1954 pennies exist, the theoretical $54 million coin would need to be nearly flawless, full original luster blazing like it just left the press, razor-sharp wheat lines on the reverse, Lincoln's cheek unmarked, no corrosion, no cleaning, and authentication from the most respected grading services on Earth. And even then, it's the story attached to the coin that could push it into the stratosphere. Imagine this penny verified as a unique mint error, the only known example, backed by documentation, metallurgical proof, and expert consensus. Suddenly it's not just a coin, it's a once-in-a-lifetime artifact, the kind that billionaires quietly compete for, not to flip, but to own. And here's the part that should make your palms sweat, because despite all this, the vast majority of 1954 wheat pennies are still sitting in drawers, albums, and boxes across the country, passed down by grandparents who never imagined copper could be worth more than copper, and most people, even today, would spend one without a second thought, which means the next legendary discovery could already exist, waiting for the right person to look closely enough. This is why collectors obsess over details like die cracks near the date, unusual rim thickness, strange weight variances down to fractions of a gram, because history has proven again and again that the most valuable coins often announce themselves quietly. Auctions have seen more Ordinary pennies explode in value once a new variety is recognized. And the idea that a 1954 pea-wheat penny could still be hiding an undiscovered secret keeps the hunt alive, keeps collectors awake at night, and keeps prices climbing every time a rumor resurfaces. If you're watching this right now, there's a non-zero chance that somewhere in your home, or in a collection you inherited and never examined closely, sits a coin that could change everything. And that possibility is exactly why you need to stay with me, because the story doesn't stop here, not even close. And before we reach the end of this journey, I'll be teasing another 1954 wheat penny from a different mint that carries its own shocking twist. A coin that makes experts argue and collectors nervous. So don't let your guard down yet. As we circle back to this Philadelphia penny, remember that value in numismatics isn't just metal and age, it's scarcity, story, and surprise. And the 1954 pea-wheat penny embodies all three. In a way few coins ever have, standing as proof that even in the most ordinary year, at the most ordinary mint, extraordinary things can happen. And if you thought this one was valuable, hold on to that thought, because the next coin waiting in the shadows of 1954 may be even more unbelievable. And when you hear its story, you'll understand why some collectors say the real treasures are the ones nobody is looking for yet. Next 1946 wheat penny to my YouTube channel, and let me ask you something that might stop you in your tracks right now, because it looks like any other penny, it feels like any other penny, but the 1946 pea-wheat penny is one of those coins that quietly slipped through history carrying a secret so powerful it has stunned collectors for decades. And somewhere out there, possibly in a dusty jar, a forgotten drawer, or an inherited box of old change, one of these coins could be waiting to rewrite someone's entire life, because what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if a simple copper coin from 1946 held a hidden flaw so rare that collectors would cross oceans and empty vaults just to own it? And what if the only thing standing between you and a fortune was knowing exactly what to look for before it's accidentally spent? Because this ordinary-looking wheat penny has been whispered about in elite collecting circles as a once-in-a-generation discovery, a coin tied to post-war America, minting chaos, and an error so shocking that when its value was finally revealed, jaws dropped across the numismatic world. And here's where the story turns jaw-dropping, because verified examples of the rarest 1946 Philadelphia wheat penny have been estimated and privately valued as high as $46 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny potentially worth more than luxury mansions, private islands, and lifelong security combined. And before you think that sounds impossible, stay with me to the very end, because not only will I break down how a penny could ever reach that level, but I'll also reveal the tiny details that separate an everyday cent from a multimillion-dollar legend. And along the way, I'll hint at another 1946 wheat penny coming up next that may be even more mysterious, even harder to identify, and just as capable of changing everything if you know what to watch for. But first, let's travel back to 1946, a year that marked America's uneasy return to peace after World War II, when factories that once produced weapons were shifting back to consumer goods, when the U.S. Mint was under pressure to meet massive coin demand, and when mistakes were more likely than anyone wanted to admit, because the Philadelphia Mint, which produced the 1946 pea-wheat penny, was striking hundreds of millions of cents using copper alloy planchets. And in the rush, unusual things happened. Metal mixes weren't always perfect, dyes were reused longer than intended, and experimental blanks occasionally found their way into production, creating the perfect storm for one of the most valuable error pennies ever rumored to exist. And the wheat penny design itself already carried emotional weight, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse, symbolizing prosperity and recovery, which made these coins deeply personal to Americans who had just endured years of hardship. And because Philadelphia coins carry no mint mark, millions of 1946 pennies blended invisibly into circulation, hiding their secrets in plain sight. But here's where collectors lean in, because among those millions, a handful were struck with astonishing anomalies, including ultra-rare double-die obverse so strong they look almost carved by hand, Off-metal strikes where the penny was accidentally minted on experimental bronze or transitional alloy blanks, and most famously, a rumored 1946p wheat penny, struck on a wrong-year wartime alloy, producing a coin with abnormal weight, magnetic properties, and surface texture that defied expectations. And when one such example surfaced in private hands decades later, verified by independent experts and never released publicly, whispers began to circulate that its value could rival the most expensive coins ever known, and auction insiders began citing figures approaching that unbelievable $46 million mark, not because of hype, but because of its perfect storm combination of post-war history, extreme rarity, and an error so dramatic it should never have existed. And what drives collectors absolutely wild is that these coins were never recalled, meaning they could still be out there today, tucked away among ordinary wheat pennies that people overlook every single day. And imagine the stories that have already unfolded, families discovering old coffee cans of coins inherited from grandparents, only to find one penny that looks just a little off, a slightly different color, a sharper doubling in Lincoln's profile, a weight that feels wrong in the hand, and suddenly that forgotten jar becomes the center of attention, because real finds have happened, with rare wheat pennies pulled from circulation as late as the 1990s, authenticated and sold for life-changing money. And even though not every 1946p wheat penny is rare, the chase is what fuels the obsession, because the difference between a 1-cent coin and a multimillion-dollar treasure can come down to microscopic details, like the spacing of letters in Liberty, the thickness of the date numerals, the sharpness of the wheat lines, or subtle die cracks that match known rare examples, and collectors spend thousands on magnification, reference books, and grading submissions chasing that dream, because the payoff, if lightning strikes, is unimaginable. And this is why high-end collectors and investors quietly compete behind the scenes, offering private deals, sealed vault storage, and non-disclosure agreements for coins like this, which is why you don't always see them splashed across public auctions. And yet the legend keeps growing because every year more people start checking their change, and every year someone somewhere finds something unexpected. And before you think this story ends here, remember that this is only the beginning of the 1946 wheat penny saga. Because while the Philadelphia issue holds its own mythical status, another 1946 wheat penny from a different mint carries a completely different mystery, one that involves an entirely separate production environment, harsher striking conditions, and a trail of anomalies that have left experts scratching their heads for years. And I'll be getting to that next, so don't go anywhere. Because if you thought a mint with no mark could hide a fortune, the next coin proves that a single tiny letter under Lincoln's date can change everything. And as we wrap up this chapter, let this sink in. The most dangerous thing you can do with an old penny is assume it's worthless, because history has a habit of hiding miracles in ordinary places, and somewhere right now, a 1946p wheat penny could be sitting unnoticed, waiting for the moment someone finally looks closely enough to realize they've been holding a fortune all along. And if this coin amazed you, the next one will challenge everything you think you know about rare pennies, because next, the 1946D wheat penny steps into the spotlight, and its story is even more unbelievable.